Hi, welcome to another episode of MYD Global. I'm your host, Leanne Hackman-Carty. When it comes to disaster recovery, response, and mitigation, oftentimes we don't think about productivity. We think, oh my gosh, there's so much to do and so little time and so few resources. But in today's episode, I'm speaking with Mark Struczewski, and he's a productivity expert. I'm talking to Mark about how his basic principles can be applied to the disaster management field in order to help us respond, recover, and prepare more effectively. So stay tuned. Hey Mark, how you doing today?
I am doing tremendous, Leanne. How are you?
I'm good. Well, thanks for agreeing to be on my show. I know I had the pleasure of talking to you for your podcast and really wanted to have you on my show because some of the work that you do is particularly relevant for some of the people that tune into my programs as well. So in particular, just let's start with you. Tell me about yourself, your background.
Well, I was originally born and raised in a suburb of Rochester, New York. And in July 1997, I had enough of the blizzards and the cold and the ice and the sub-zero temperatures. And I moved to Houston, Texas, where it's supposed to be hot year-round, but we do get winter down here. I always blame it on the kids in Canada leaving the doors open, but that's just my story. Only child, and I love what I do. I wake up every day excited for a new day to serve people.
So you actually moved from an area that would have gotten blizzards and I suppose hurricanes as well. And you didn't move too far from disasters because that part, the Houston area, is prone to a lot of disasters, in particular hurricanes, right?
Yeah, but unlike a winter storm, we can see it's coming. And when it hits the area, it just generally sticks around for a day or two and it keeps on going. Where a winter storm could last, and after it's gone, you got lots of snow. So we do get our hurricanes down here, but fortunately, we don't get them every year.
Yeah. So I know, when you know that most of my work is around disasters and whether it's preparing for them, responding to them, or recovering from them. And your expertise is really around that productivity piece. And I have never seen that lens put on disasters. And so that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about today. So, you're an expert in productivity. Tell me about how you kind of see that lens fitting on some of the work we do when it comes to disasters.
Well, productivity starts with the word pro, and proactive starts with the three letters of pro. If you want to prepare, you have to be proactive. You can't wait until a disaster already happens. So, if the quiet time for you now, think about, okay, what do I need to do? What do I need to have ready? Where do I need to have my web server stored or my computer stored, my information stored? Think about that now, not when a disaster is hours or a few days away. A lot of people are procrastinators. They think it's never going to happen to me. When Hurricane Harvey hit Houston in 2017, we didn't think that it would come here, number one. And number two, we didn't think it would stay over Houston for 3 days, dropping 51 inches of rain. And a lot of people, even though we live near the Gulf Coast, a lot of people go, I don't live in the Gulf Coast. I live inland. But Harvey didn't come up the coast. It went inland and then kind of curved back around because of all the fronts and stuff like that and sat over us for 3 days. And so a lot of people lost a lot because they just figured it's not going to happen to me. I'm 45 minutes to an hour away from the Gulf of Mexico. I'm fine. And you can't ever be anywhere and go, you know what? It's not going to happen to me. You have to think about what could happen and how can I prepare for it?
Yeah. Well, and so if I'm say an emergency manager or I'm an elected official or someone who's going to have to actually respond to that immediate disaster. One of the things when I think of putting a productivity lens on something like that, I think these guys they're stressed out trying to respond and react very quickly. So, they might say, well, I am being productive. What are you talking about? What would you just say to someone like that to say, because I really think that the skill set that you have could be of huge value to them. And I'm just curious, how would you pitch to them in a way to show that what I have for you is of huge value? I'm not saying you're not doing a good job, but I'm adding some tools and resources to your toolkit.
Well, I remember a number of years ago, I was an EMT up in Rochester, New York. And I remember, when we go to emergency, whether it's a motor vehicle accident or a house fire, whatever the case may be, we tend to rush, 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 rush. And I remember I went to this really horrific car accident, and I was a new medic. I was still wet behind the ears, and a lot of people were hurt. And I remember there's a paramedic there, and he was cool as a cucumber. I mean, he was in control, and I remember he told me to go get something out of the ambulance. I'm like, I don't know what. I was freaking out, and he goes, "It's in the ambulance, second shelf, third one in." And he was so calm, and by him being calm, it calmed me down. I'm like, okay, if he is like in charge of the whole scene and he's calm, well, then I naturally became calm. So whenever you're going to any kind of disaster situation, the first thing you need to do is be calm. Because when you're calm, that resonates with everybody else. Because they look to you as a leader. Like, if you're calm, then I'll be calm. If you're freaking out, then they're going to freak out. And so I believe it's got to start with the leader.
Yeah. And I agree. And because they set the tone, and even, we've had the mayors that get on the media, and they're being interviewed, and some of them are excellent spokespeople, and some of them are really not. They're not prepared. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you think, well, maybe they shouldn't even speak at all.
Yeah.
Because they're just not the right spokesperson. But do you have any ideas, any tools, even what you do with your work, that could help perhaps target elected officials and say, hey, here's some tools, here's some training, here's something that you can access that can help prepare you for that moment that you need to go live and be calm?
I think I'm a big fan of preparing. So I would encourage people in their municipalities to have meetings, not just with the fire people and the EMS people and the hospitals, but actually have meetings involving the community. Say, okay, what are you going to need if something happens? Now, a lot of communities already do this. Like when hurricane season comes along, people can call in, I think it's 211 here in Houston, and say, hey, listen, I'm immobile. I'm going to need special rescue. I'll let you know I'm wheelchair bound or something like that. So you could do little things like that. But I think what you should do is not live in a vacuum and say, I've got all the answers. You need to go to the people on the front lines. You need to go to the people in the community and say, okay, listen, we want to make sure that our disaster preparedness plan is all set. Would you like to come to a meeting, or you'd like to join us on a Zoom call and give us your thoughts? Maybe you live in a very difficult to access subdivision. Maybe it always floods. If it rains a little bit, it floods. Well, maybe they're not aware of that. Maybe they realize that you live in the back of the community. It's harder to get to. Let them know, because the people who are there to rescue you, they may not know everything about every community and every house and every street. And so you should bring the community together and say, listen, help us help you by telling us what your needs are. I believe preparation, it will help you be more productive, and then maybe even do some drills, because if people are aware of what's going to happen at the time of disaster, then they're going to be calmer, because they're going to okay, we've already gone through this a couple of times. We know what to expect. We've gone to Zoom calls. We've seen the training. Okay, I'm probably still going to freak out, but now in the back of my mind, I'm going to okay, I know what's going to happen. I can trust the process.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times it is just that awareness, just aware of, I've thought this as a potential. I've gone through the scenario. I've thought of what I'm going to do. And that just gives you that sense of calm. I mean, it's funny because when you never know how you're going to react until you're in the situation.
Yep.
Right. But some of the tools and steps that you are obviously training people in, that helps them at least have something in the back of their head to draw from.
Otherwise, they have no reference point, because there's nothing back there. They have no reference point.
Yeah. So going forward, is there anything? I mean, I know that a lot of people tune in. One of the things I like to do is just put people in touch with individuals that are doing some stuff that I think can be of value, whether they're solidly in that mitigation side, the response side, or the recovery. Is there anything, any advice you would give, anything that you would say, yeah, for sure, go here, or this is the kind of resource that would be of value, or think about this?
Well, I think people need to, when it's calm, when there's nothing really going on, you need to not only do the things I already suggested on the show, but you also need to make sure you're getting enough rest. Make sure you're taking care of yourself. A lot of people, when I talk about health and wellness, they go, what's that got to do with productivity? If you're not getting to sleep, if you're not eating the right foods, you're not drinking half your weight in ounces of body and half your weight in ounces of water every day, you're not going to be optimal. And so when that disaster comes, well, you're not going to be able to help the people as much. I tell people, if you're overweight, if you're like morbidly overweight, do you really want to go and try to rescue someone? Do you really want to go? I mean, most of the people I work with on the ambulance many years ago, they're all fit, because you don't know. You may have to climb into a car. You may have to, climb up up a building or something, a ladder or something like that to get in the building. And so you gotta take care of yourself, and you can't do that overnight. If a hurricane's in the Gulf of Mexico, well, that's typically 3 days out, okay, or 3 to 5 days out. That's not the time to start saying, okay, I'm going to start getting in shape. I'm going to start exercising. I'm going to start eating. But it's too late. Now's the time to do it. So if when, like if you live in middle America, when tornado season is, okay, between May 1st and November 1st, that's hurricane season. It's coming. So get prepared. Don't assume that it's not going to happen. Or we had 2 hurricanes within 5 years. And the first hurricane, I think, was Hurricane Ike. And everyone says, okay, that's a 100-year storm. That's not how the natural world works. It doesn't go, okay, hit Galveston, check. Okay, New Orleans, check. Tampa, check. It doesn't work that way. It goes where it's going to go. And so you always have to be prepared. The unfortunate thing is a lot of people, they don't think about it until it's imminent. It's like wildfire's coming, or tornadoes coming, or an earthquake. Then they start thinking about it. Well, you should have thought about it a long time before that to be prepared for it.
Yeah, and I think the other thing when it comes to that health and wellness piece is, if you've been through something and you've already had trauma, to know when maybe you're not the right person to be on the front lines. Because I think that's the other side, when people, think, no, I'm good now. And then all of a sudden those trigger events happen and they realize, wow, I haven't even dealt with this myself. I should not be in this position. So even just understanding, being in tune with yourself and knowing this is too much for me. I need to pass this baton on to someone else.
And there's no shame in that either. If it's not you, or you're not equipped, it's okay to say, listen, I'm not ready for it. It's okay. And I think a lot of people, especially men, we tend to be macho and like, oh, I'll figure it out. No, in a time of emergency, you don't want to figure it out. You want the person that, if I get in a wreck, I want the person coming to me that knows what they're doing, not to go, well, let me look at this YouTube video while I'm trying to give you care. I want you to know what you're doing.
Yeah, no, agreed. So Mark, before we wrap up, just anything that you wanted to mention that perhaps I didn't ask you about today?
Well, no, I just invite people to go to my website, mrproductivity.com. There you can get a couple free resources. Number one, get the top 5 productivity tips for entrepreneurs. Even if you're not an entrepreneur, they're still going to serve you. I also go live for training on Saturday. Most Saturdays, it's free. Just go to my website and register. It's my gift to you. You can also find out direct links to my podcast, which is also my website. So those are 3 resources that people can go tap into and let me help you become a more productive, a better performer than you are today.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Mark.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Bye-bye.